Yeah, a very good morning to everyone, and happy to see you here again. Um, and thank you for joining yesterday for all your with all your queries, interesting queries, and thanks to Madhukarji, for his patience and listening to us and answering to our questions and queries yesterday. So before we start, we have another interesting person and renowned person with us, Mr. Shaurav Ghosh. And a very good morning, Shaurav. So Shauragosti is the founder of Center for Friendly Movement, Community Friendly Movement. But he is also, I mean, there's a lot to tell about him, but I'll just put it in a nutshell. He is a master's graduate in business management and business administration um, from Institute of Planning and Management in New Delhi, and also the co-founder of Community Friendly Movement. But apart from that, he has this very interesting journey from his childhood to where he is right now. So although he was not really interested in studies when he was young, but then he picked up studies after almost a near fatal accident at some point of time, and then he pursued engineering, but dropped from engineering, and pursued management. And he started working with artisans and developed a model which was well received by different segments of the society, and he was invited for a talk by the United Nations at the World Bank headquarters in Washington D.C., which led to him take more interest in rural development and development artisans. But later, he felt that it would be nice, to go about developing a village rather than just artisans. And with that, he started focusing more on bridging the gap between the human and financial resources, so that the economic resources are tapped, and the delivery mechanisms of the government are reaches the last mile. So with that, his focus more shifted on to making the panchayats, or strengthening the panchayats in a corporatized manner, which of course he calls them as Swanigamit. I don't know why I always messes up this word. So it's like corporatizing panchayats and making them to pay taxes and become a more the government bodies at the ground. So that is his model, and with which a CFM is also working right now. And he and Madhukarji are colleagues at CFM, and that's introduction about Saroji in a nutshell. And I'm really happy to have him here today with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If I missed something, please.
Not at all. You actually said more than it was I have done.
No, one of the key factors that you missed, Kanna, was that the Ashoka Fellowship that Saurav has earned.
Yes.
Sorry for intruding into this meeting. I was here to listen to the fish.
So we are trying to fish you out, fish out all your credibilities and credentials.
I am nothing without you guys. So let's not.
Yeah. He is also a former Ashoka fellow. Thanks, Madhukarji, for adding that. So yeah, having said that, as I said, yesterday we had a very interesting discussion session and seminar with Madhukarji. He listened to our queries and questions patiently, answered us, and also my colleagues who took a lot of interest and come up with their own queries and questions. So yesterday's discussion was more on understanding water as a component of nature, and also understanding the water cycle and its interaction with nature and whatever. It's more of on the water as an element. But today it would be more on aquaculture and entrepreneurship. So before that, I would repeat the same thing what one of my friends says, Mr. Manish Rajankar. He says fish doesn't live in water, but water is the home of the fish. So he says we should take care of the home of the fish as much as we take care of our homes. So with that, I would invite everyone to share their queries, and I would request Madhukarji and Saroji to respond to our queries and help us understand more about um, culture of fishes in an applying Vedic and ecological principles, and also linking panchayats and fisher groups in an enterprise model. Yes. Thank you very much. I'll stop there, and I'll request others like to join in. Thank you.
So before we begin and people start asking the queries, I would first like to understand: do we understand the present scenario of fisheries when it comes to inland commercial fisheries, or should we start from the basic bare-bone process of how fishery development is taken shape in India? Where do we start from? Should we start from the history? How it started in 1970, how it was a recognized sector, and then how it has taken the shape of where it is today, what are the standard practices, and then we move on towards ecological. What should be the right path?
Fisheries expert like Vidya and all can take Lal Vijay ji, Patra ji.
Yeah, Madhukar, that will be better because many people are new to the subject also. If you proceed like that, it will be really grateful and helpful for the other team members.
Yeah. I think that is also good.
Okay. Okay, so let's start from the history. Before 1970, fishery was not a recognized sector at all by Government of India. For the first time in year 1970, Government of India Planning Commission started to focus on fishery as a sector for livelihood, and because government was taking interest into it, it got shaped up into sector for making money and earning money, a livelihood sector and all that. So government of India started planning about it. They did a lot of survey. 1971, they published their survey for the first time that in 1 hectare, which was 2.5 acres, the average national production was somewhere close to 600 kgs. Basically, 600 fishes were reared in 1 hectare, 2.5 acres. That was the data of 1971, which was published on the fisheries for the first time in India. That I'm talking specific to inland fisheries. Now, after that, Government of India started researching on it, and they opened a lot of research institutes and training centers, and whatever government infrastructure could be built around fisheries, focusing on fisheries. All that was done. There were fishery departments opened in almost every state. Fishery department was opened into central government, and eventually it was annexed into agriculture. So it became the Indian Council of Agriculture Research also had a fishery wing, which was all created after 1971. Now, all that research, whether it is SIFA or whether it is marine fishery or it is research on fish genetics, that is NBFGR, which is there in Lucknow, all these institutes were created after 1971, focusing on fishery, and every state had this fishery department. And the journey from 1971 till 2015 was able to transform the fishery sector from 600 fishes in 1 hectare to about 2,600 fishes in 1 hectare. So today, if you look at the national average, it is about 2,600 to 3,000 fishes in 1 hectare. That is the national average. If somebody does 4,000 fishes, he gets a national award. If somebody gets 5,000 fishes, he gets a cash reward as well. So that is the national average today. And the other developments which have happened in these about 30-40 years is that India Fisheries Department, for the sake of development of fisheries, introduced a lot of invasive species breed into India, which dominated the Indian fishery scenario. Like if you look at the carp fishes, the Indian carp fishes are rohu, katla, and mrigal. Some places mrigal is called naini, like in Bihar and Jharkhand it is called naini. Some places it is called mrigal. Some places it is called muraki, like up north, Haryana, Punjab. These places they call it muraki, right? Even Western UP they call it Miraki. Eastern UP they call it Naini only, right? So these were the Indian carp fishes. But thanks to the fishery department, today we also have Chinese carp fishes, which are like silver carp, we have grass carp, and we have common carp. Now these fishes are more of invasive fishes which have been introduced into the Indian inland fishery by the fisheries department, because their focus was to increase the production, and in the name of increase of production they have disturbed the entire native biodiversity of the wetlands of India. Then we have another very rugged and very invasive fish that we have got from Nile River, which is called tilapia. Tilapia is a fish which is a fin fish, but it has got thorns. So if you don't know how to hold a tilapia in your hand, it will cut your hand, right? In India, we used to have only catfish category, which is like mangur, and there is another breed, chingi, which could cut your hand. But tilapia is somewhere in between. It is neither fully catfish, it is not fully carp fish. It is somewhere in between, and that is also found in India now, though it is a native of a Nile River, which is in Egypt. Then we've got another one which is Pangasius, which is actually a Vietnamese fish, but it is again a very rugged fish, grows very fast, uh, tastes pathetic as per the fish lovers. Those who like eating fish, who are very fond of fish eating, they say we get a taste only into the Indian carp fishes, rohu, katla, mrigal. If you talk to people in West Bengal, where they are most fond of fishes, their taste is more like we love ilish much. Ilish is basically hilsa, so it is a brackish water fish. So there are various varieties of fishes, various breeds of fishes which are there. And apart from that, there is another fish which I forgot to mention, that is a big head carp. Now this is again a carp fish which is native of US, but now it is found in India also. Again, thanks to fishery department, because they imported all those ruggedized fishes in India for increment of the production. So this production increased has actually made the native Indian fishes as the rare breed. Similarly, into the same thing happened into the trout fishes also. Trout are usually the cold water fishes. Like all these fishes that I have mentioned so far, the Indian carp, the Chinese carp, tilapia or pangasius, these are all warm water fishes which survive between 5 degrees to about 30 degrees of temperature. Trouts are the cold water fishes which survive in below 5-degree temperature. So, like if you go into the hilly areas, you go to Nainital, you go to Dal Lake, the native breeds there were all trout. And trout fishes are considered to be, I mean, as per the fish lovers again, they consider to be very tasty fishes, and they're very nutritious fishes also. So fish again, wherever fish eaters are there, they get a complete meal, and the cheapest balanced diet is when you eat fish and rice, right? So it is a complete balanced diet because you also get omega-3 fatty acids in fish. So that is why it is considered to be a very good feed and a very balanced diet for all sorts of people. So from nutrition point of view, also fish has become a very important subject, and that was probably one of the reasons for government of India to focus towards fisheries in the first place, because this was the cheapest balanced diet available. So that was the development in fishery so far. Now, today the only factor which is left after all sorts of research and development by government of India is to increase the footprints. India happens to be globally number two next to China, but there is a huge difference between India and China in terms of production. Understanding this fact very well, that into China the entire fishery sector is very well organized, whereas in India it is a very organic growth. It is not very organized sector in India. So in India, basically, it is more of a unorganized, clustered development. So if in Andhra and West Bengal, which always are contemplating for the number one position for the fishery production in India, there they have the maximum production because fish eaters are more, so consumption is high. But today their production is so high that they are exporting to all the nearby states. In fact, Andhra fishes are available in Delhi as well. So that's the scenario so far. And again, the Indian Council of Agriculture Research says that you need to do something so that the soil fertility is maintained. Similarly, there is a proper training imparted by the fishery institutes also, that you should be adding urea, you should be adding fish feed, and all those human interventions are there into aqua ecology as well. And that is why what Kanna's friend said, that uh, fish is living in water, and water is the home to the fishes. So it is important that we maintain the water the way we maintain our home. So that is why all these concepts have cropped up, because we have started intervening a bit too much into the aqua ecology as well. Like the concept that we have are all imported concepts from Western countries. We test the water as uh, the chemical components of water. Like we test the soil health card is nothing but the chemical testing of the soil. Similarly, water health is decided by the chemical testing of water. People don't realize that why exactly is the water health or the soil health deteriorating. Why is it isn't in its natural state? It is only because we are the people who have contaminated. Like if you go to Haryana, there is a huge subsidy for uh, prawn production, but everywhere where they are doing this prawn culture, everywhere invariably they have this plastic sheet in the bottom of the tank so that the water stays in the pond. So they have cut the soil factor completely, because they've isolated the soil and water through this plastic sheet. Same you will find in the name of water conservation in Maharashtra, wherein just in the last government where the Devendra Fadnavis government was there was a huge project in which there were over 9,000 crores pumped in. That was the Sujalam Soflam Yojana, and there were about 60,000 water bodies created in the drought-prone Buldhana district. But every water body that they created under this scheme were all laminated by plastic. So that soil connect was not there, and the aquifer recharge was practically impossible because of this isolation. So they created the ponds, but the ponds had their own contamination because the water was stagnant, and the linkage with the aquifer was not getting established because of the lamination. Right. Now, coming specific to the fisheries, what happens in the fishery is these institute decide that how many fishes can stay in how much of water. So if you have, like I said, the national average is 4,000 to 5,000 fishes in 1 hectare. So what they do is they do a calculation that how much area will be consumed by one fish. Now that actually is a stupid calculation because fish doesn't want a registry to happen in onto the water in which she is going to survive, right? If you have a 1 hectare, that 1 hectare water body is available to every fish in that 1 hectare. So it is not like a one-bedroom apartment or a two-bedroom apartment like human beings, wherein you need to take care of how many people can live in a one-bedroom apartment, and you decide on that factor, right? So if you're creating an apartment for human beings, every flat in the apartment goes to a different registry. That is a man-made system. But if you're creating a fish pond in 1 hectare, every fish has the access to that entire 1 hectare, right? So such kind of calculations crop up when you teach fisheries into the fishery institute. Then you decide that okay, a fingerling is going to consume 8 times of its body weight. So if you have put in let's say uh, 50 kgs of fingerlings into the pond, then you need to put in 50 into 8 so that they can take the feed naturally, right? Now that is again a stupid calculation because there is no one on earth who can decide that a 2 month baby is going to take so much of feed, right? It is just an assumption. Now, human baby case also is an assumption for human beings, whereas they are living into their natural habitat. Whereas when you conduct a study on the fishes, it is never ever done into their natural habitat. It is always done into a lab environment. Now, lab environment, when you are putting in a fish from a 1 hectare water body, when you are putting in the fish into a 8-inch aquarium, obviously the behavioral pattern will change, and you will only have to make assumptions that okay, this much amount is being eaten by the fish, right? So such kind of studies have actually started deciding the key factors for the fisheries, and exactly the same is being taught to the fish farmers, due to which there is a lot of confusion that gets created because the fishery scientists are not studying the fishes into their natural habitat. They are not preaching on ecology and environment. They are not talking about the natural environment. And that is why today, when you go into the fish market, you will find that there is a clear distinction between what is called as the fresh fish, which is caught from the nearby river, and which is caught and the one which has been exported from West Bengal or from Andhra, which was packed maybe 2 days or 3 days back, and today it is available in front of you. So there are two kinds of fishes being sold. One, I mean, the same fish which you want to buy, even if you're buying the Indian carp, like let's say rohu or katla or mrigal, the same fishes will have two rates in the market. One from the nearby river, which will be costed higher, and the other one which has come in from a truck which was exported from a nearby location, where the fish will be dead. It will not be a live fish, and there the price will also be lesser. So this is what is happening in the fishery sector. Coming towards the way people are rearing fishes is there is a concept of Chinese hatchery which has come into the picture. wherein what they have is a two separate tanks, one for the female fishes, one for the male fishes, and then there is a breeding tank wherein they take out the male and the female fishes and put them into the breeding tank for a limited period of time, and after that the male fishes are segregated and the female fishes are taken out. They are injected hormones, and all the fertilized eggs are taken out from the fish manually, and these eggs, fertilized eggs, are called spawns. Now they are put into a netted chamber, into a circular pond wherein the water is circulated from all sides through a pump. The fresh water is pumped every time, and this is to just give a feel to the spawns that they are there in the mother's womb only, and you always have fresh water around you, and that is how the fishes are grown. Now these spawns are sold at the spawn stage also. The next stage is the zero size. The next stage is the, what do you call it? Fry size. Next stage to fry is fingerling. Fingerling is, the name comes in from the finger, the sizes of the human finger, this big. And then you have the earling, then you have the smolt, then you have the grown-up fishes, and then you have the brooders. Brooders are the one which will again breed and give birth to the spawns. Right. Now all these 8 stages, the fishes are sold. So when it comes to the inland fishery business per se, the business is purely dependent upon what exactly is your business model, because fish will be sold at each stage of the development, from spawn till the brooder. In every size, fishes are sold in the Indian market. So the business model is purely dependent upon what exactly is the network access that the seller has or the fish farmer has, whether they have access to the mandi wherein they can only sell the grown up fishes, or they have an access to the fish farmers where even the spawns or fries or fingerlings or zero size, anything can be sold. And where they have an access to the commercial fisheries, the bigger fish farms, where they would like to buy primarily the yearlings or the smolts, which grow up very fast. Now, there is a specific process of growing the yearlings or the smolt, because that is again an atrocity over the fish, wherein too many fishes are stocked in too small an area, restricting their growth. So they are kept in a restricted growth environment for about a year's time, and then they are sold to the bigger ponds, so that when excess of food is available and excess of water and the huge area is available, they grow very fast. So for 1 year, when you have held the growth, that growth will come in a matter of 1 quarter itself. So that is another model on which inland fisheries are working. So these are the various business models on which the fish farmers are working. And I told you about the breeds. Now coming on to the ecology or the natural or the environmental side of it also. Uh, as I think we touched upon this yesterday as well, for any kind of animal or plant or bird rearing, there is an extensive research done by Salim Ali Institute of Ornithology in Coimbatore, uh, wherein they have found out that there are 3 basic principles which are required to be maintained for rearing of any kind of uh, life, whether it is fishes or animals or birds, doesn't matter. You need to ensure 3 things. One is ample amount of fresh water, then is ample amount of natural feed, and third is a peaceful habitat. Now, if we translate that into fisheries, we have to understand the food chain inside the water. Like I explained yesterday, there are single-celled organisms which are consumed by plankton, which are again consumed by the fishes. And the fish excrete ammonia, which needs to be removed out of the water body. Now, this removal of ammonia from the water body is something which is a responsibility given to the single-celled organism. So that is how the aquatic food chain goes on. Single-celled organisms are consumed by the plankton, which are consumed by the fishes, and the fish excreta is used as the feed for the single-celled organism. So this completes the whole cycle. And the single-celled organism also have a responsibility of production of oxygen within water, so that the dissolved oxygen level is high, and the all the entire chain is able to breathe. Right? So that is a complete chain, and that is a system of check and balance. So everyone can get their native natural feed, and when they get their native natural feed and the water quality is maintained well to the natural standards, to the natural spring standards, or to the rainwater standards, obviously the water quality is the best. And in this natural native environment, all the fishes will be in the best of their health and will be free from the diseases, and they will continue to breed. So basically, when I was talking about taking out the economy yesterday, when I think the last question where we left was from the perspective of uh, how to make it profitable for the fish farmers. So we, apart from the growth into the production, what is also very very important is to keep the input cost as low as possible. So when you create a natural environment and the fish is breeding in the natural environment, that basically means that you just have to put in the fishes only once, and for rest of your life you will keep taking out the fishes, because you take out the bigger fishes and the younger fishes will grow into bigger fishes, they'll breed, and then you'll have the next generation, then the next generation. So that is how it goes on and on. So all this can be done when the natural native environment is maintained, and that can be maintained only when the the active food chain is maintained, the linkage with the underground aquifer is maintained, because I told you about the mineral cycle. How does the water coming up from the underground aquifer brings in a lot of minerals which are required in the aqua ecology, which is required for maintenance of the active aquatic food chain. So that is how nature keeps replenishing the resources from the aquifer below also, and from the top in form of rain also. So everything which needs to be supplied for fresh fish is naturally provisioned by the nature, and your pond is as fresh and as fertile as the river. So you have the natural feed, you have the natural flow, and you have the natural water. So that is how, I mean, building up of the economy can be done either ways. Like what we had discussed earlier with Vidya ji and with Kanna, uh, that we will build up a model wherein there will be mother ponds, and these mother ponds will continue to feed the ancillary ponds around, because mother pond will maintain the ecology, the natural breeding will happen, and will take out the smaller fishes and shift it to the other ponds nearby. So every mother pond will feed about 9 ponds around, and or 12 ponds around, and that is how, if we have let's say 9 mother ponds, they will create an ecosystem for 108 ponds, wherein the initial 9 ponds are the mother ponds wherein the production will happen, and the smaller fishes will be shifted to the other nearby pond. So this is one model. The other model which you can adopt into the smaller ponds is you when the fishes have grown up, you take out the bigger fishes and you sell in the market, and the smaller fishes will continue to grow and they will breed, and then again you take out the bigger fishes and the smaller fishes will be left in the pond. So either ways, the model can be worked out. From the commercial perspective, you are the better judge where exactly would you like to build your economy from. But technically or ecologically speaking, you can have the pond very well maintained from either of the perspectives. So that was a brief. Now you can probably start asking your queries, and the format what we followed yesterday is what we're going to follow today as well. Patra साहब, लाल विजय जी, विद्या जी.
सर मधुकर जी एक छोटा सा डाउट है. हाउ कुड वी नो अबाउट our fresh ecology, eco-ecology? Still we are pursuing that lime applications is controlled on the water pH level, and we considered the if pH level is 7 or between 7 to 8, that is very good atmosphere for the fish growth. So as you said, rightly said, the fresh water is needed for all, not only for human being but also for fisheries and all, and natural food, arrangement of natural food is also very necessary, and the aqua environment. So can you tell us some kind of tools or skills that how could I examine or experience that this water is very fresh, or segregate
Now,
the water bodies?
the three things which are very very important for the fishes. Number one is the DO level has to be high so that they can breed. Second is there should be ample amount of their feed, and third is ammonia removal from the water body. Now these three things are the most important things. Now I'm not talking from the perspective of lab experiments or lab reports, but I'm talking from the perspective of what a tribal man can do without any equipments. Okay.
Exactly.
So when you're standing next to the water body, you will be able to observe the water body very clearly, and all tribals have that natural connect with the forest, with the water body, with the land, with the air, right? So what you can actually see is the viscosity of water, what they call in the village language is whether the water is heavy or it is light. You know, the heavy water is something like a burnt diesel, when you can actually see that the natural waves are not there, right? That means the viscosity is high. Second is, if you see any kind of algal bloom in water, that means eutrophication is happening. If eutrophication is happening, that means the water is not in good health. That means the ammonia deposition or ammonia nitrite is in excess. You can see the stark green color of the water when you have a look at the water body. This means the native ecology is not in good shape, right? Because the ammonia nitrite, phosphate, sulfate, all these are increasing. That is why this dark green color is there into the water, right? The water will not be natural wavy water like what you see in the my background, right? So this wavy water without any winds is giving you an indication that the water is healthy and fresh. When the water is healthy and fresh, it meets all the three parameters, right? you can actually see fish activity in water standing there next to the water body, and that itself will give you an indication whether the fishes are having enough resources, abundance, full of life, life is exuberating in the water body or not, right? So these are the key indicators with which you can understand whether the fish feed is an ample amount, or whether the water, I mean, aqua ecology is very well maintained or not, right? So, coming on to the lab parameter side, into the lab parameter, when you're testing the water, your pH, which you said 7 to 8, that is not the ideal pH for the fisheries. The ideal pH for the fisheries is 7.5 to 9.5. Because fishes love the alkaline environment, and in the alkaline environment they grow better, their health is much better, and the crudest of the form is when you do the netting and you take out the fishes. When you keep the fish in your hand, the mucus layer should not come in your hand.
Okay.
There is a thin film of mucus on the fish scales when the water is unhealthy, right? The ideal condition of the fish is, I'm specific to the carp fishes. They should be very very shiny. There should be no layer of mucus on their scales, right? So these are some of the key indicators that fishes are in good health, and the water body is very well maintained.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one more thing is, you have mentioned that water lily somehow disturb the photosynthesis in water, water
Yes.
tank. So, in some of the tanks, we have water lily as well as the aqua weeds. So, what do you suggest? Is it good for the growth of fisheries? Like we have grass crabs, stocking grass crabs along with the IMC. So, is it good, or we need some precautions to avoid that?
Wherever this is the condition of your tank and you have grass carp and IMCs, you will have higher production of the grass carp and lower production of the IMCs. Have you
Yes,
observed
yes.
this? This is only because you have the weeds, and the weeds can be eradicated by the grass carp, which is, grass carp is an invasive species, not a native Indian breed,
Yeah.
right? So grass carp is a ruggedized fish. It has survived into much harsher environments, and that is why grass carp has developed this trait. This is a
Yeah.
genetic modification of the fish, that it has started eating grass. That is why it is called a grass carp, right?
Yeah.
So, in the ideal condition, wherever you are rearing IMCs, though people have this what do you call it, uh, notion that grass carps, I mean IMCs and CMCs can be reared together, but wherever IMCs and CMCs will be reared together, you'll have a higher production of CMCs and lower production of IMCs, because CMCs are invasive. They can consume more resources, and that is why the IMCs do not get the natural higher growth. Right. So these are competing fishes. So
Exactly.
when it comes to any kind of weeds into the water body, as I told you, weeds are an indicative of eutrophication happening into the water body. So in case eutrophication is happening, it is not good for the fishes. The eutrophication has to be stopped, because it is indicating that the resources are being consumed by other species.
Yeah.
Other species means, I'm talking about the weed here, I'm not talking about the CMCs.
Yes.
Even if you have only IMCs into the water body and the water body has got weeds, you will not get the natural production, you will not get the natural growth of the fishes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Patra Sahab, Kanna, Vidya ji, anybody?
Sir, sir. Sir, I have one small question. But you said about the water quality parameters. I just one question, sir. Here, what happening? Due to some uncertain reasons, that tank water disturb sometimes, like in color changes or any acidity, this type. Then what can do? Then how to manage it in that moment, in as a quick treatment? What you can suggest them? We are likely, as fisheries department guys are suggesting to maintain the water quality for using the line like that.
Yeah.
So, what's your suggestion, sir?
See, we are specific about treating the water with our technology, right? When we are treating the water with our technology, those quick fix measures are not required, because you are first you have to reinstate the native ecology. Once it is reinstated and
Yeah.
your ecology is in good shape, then ecology will maintain itself. In case of any untoward activity, like maybe sewage has coming from somewhere, or there was a tempest, or there was
Yeah.
heavy rain, or anything of that sort, whenever there is a natural activity happening, it will not disturb the ecology. But if there is a man-made intervention like sewage or industrial effluent, something has come into the water body, then we will have to start treating it again till the time it normalizes and the aqua quality is strengthened to that level. So that's the way it can be done. Or else, in case if there is what do you call fresh animal waste which has entered through the sewage, like let's say cow dung or buffalo dung or something of that sort has come into the water body, that will create a lot of methane production, because it is not dried manure but green cow dung, right? So if it is undecomposed green cow dung, it will have a lot of methane and carbon dioxide. So whenever methane or carbon dioxide is released into the water body, and there are fishes around it, around that lump of cow dung, which is getting decomposed and the methane is getting released. If the fishes are around that, then fishes will die because of this direct methane inhalation. So that is a critical problem, and if the amount is high, then you will have to restart the dosing treatment on immediate basis. And one thing which you can do as the immediate measure, as what do you call first aid of the water body, is you can use the raw sea salt. The
Yeah.
raw sea salt comes into those lumps. So those lumps have to be grinded to convert them into powder. And
Yeah.
this powder, you can take out the water from the water body itself and put this salt powder into it, mix it well, and then do a spray on the water body, so that whatever methane is coming out, that will get mixed with this salt water and settle down instead of coming up, so the fishes can be safeguarded. So this is a first aid measure which can be taken.
Oh, God. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
Hi, Madhukar sir.
Yes, Shailaja ji.
I had a small question.
जी बोलिए.
In the tribal pocket, how the many times we found that we have lack of pH testing kit to test the properties of water.
Yeah.
How tribal farmer is there any traditional knowledge they
Yeah.
can know whether the water is good or bad for the fish in a particular time?
pH you can do very simply. I mean, you can create a pH testing kit well within your tribal village itself. uh, you would be knowing there is uh, a plant called hibiscus. uh, इधर उसको उड़हल बोलते हैं. There is a red color flower with a uh, uh, tentacle coming out, which has got all the seeds.
Yes, sir. Oh,
Right.
got it.
So you take any paper, uh, uncolored paper, unprinted paper. Uh, Take a white color paper and rub this flower onto it. Right. It will become violet colored paper. Okay. Now this paper is a litmus paper. You just cut strips of it and you put that into the water. If it turns red, it is acidic. If it turns green or yellowish, then it is towards alkaline side. So pH testing you can do at the village level itself. You can create pH paper and you can get the pH. So that's not a problem. You can create the pH papers in home also.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Anybody else? Prachi ji, Rakesh ji, Kanna, Vidya ji.
Sir, as per you were saying, there is no input cost for fish culture. It is increased production or only input cost is decreased, sir, in this technology?
See, when I'm saying the fishes will breed in the water body, obviously you will get a higher production because the number of the fishes will go up. As far as measuring the number is concerned, what we have tested so far as the tentative idea of the number of fishes, because what happens is when the fishes are breeding, you will have all sizes of the fishes into the same water body. You know, you have put in fingerlings, let us suppose, right? The fingerlings have grown up into the yearlings, into let's say grown up fishes or the brooder, and they are breeding also. So you will have multiple generations of fishes into the same water body. So you can only get a tentative estimate of how many number of fishes are there. Because normally what happens is you put in fishes of one quantity or one number in one go, and then you take out all of them and you can empty the pond. That is how normal inland fishery is done. But in our case, because the fishes are breeding, obviously you'll have multiple generations of the fishes. And if you've put in 5,000 fishes and you've already taken out 15,000 fishes, then obviously the number has gone beyond what you had put in. So there was this one of the gentlemen who was trying to figure out how many fishes were there, and as per their estimate, they had 1.5 lakh fishes in a 1 acre pond. So you can imagine when the national average is 4,000 fishes in 1 hectare, this gentleman had 1.5 lakh fishes in just mere 1 acre, which is 2.5 times smaller than 1 hectare. And the national average is 5,000 in 1 hectare, and he had 1.5 lakh fishes in 1 acre. So you can imagine there is no comparison between the ecological way of fishing and the government taught way of fishing.
Thank you, sir.
So, any further questions?
Sir, one thing also. We digging new farm pond, sir. After digging farm pond, we applying fresh cow dung to 2 to 3 inch layer as for storing water, before storing water.
right?
It is also disconnect the link between water and soil.
No, no, not at all.
Yeah.
What you are doing is a good practice,
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
but always try to maintain that this cow dung that you are adding to the fresh pond is not a fresh cow dung, because then that also needs to be decomposed. So if you're getting cow dung manure, it is good. If you can get slurry from the biogas plant, that is also good, because basically what this cow dung manure or this cow dung is supposed to do is basically it establishes an equilibrium between the aquaculture and the soil culture. The soil ecology and the aqua ecology comes at a balance, and that is why the water is retained and the soil ecology is revived, and the aqua ecology is blending well with the soil ecology to establish the soil capillary link to the aquifer. So this is a good practice. Only thing is that you have to take care that the cow dung or the manure should not be fresh. It should be decomposed, or at least the methane and carbon dioxide is already extracted. That is what happens into the biogas slurry, because methane is used as a fuel. That is why the biogas plant exists, right? Any further questions, anyone?
Yes, one more thing.
Yeah.
In Malkangiri, sir, uh, actually during the time of stocking of fish, we are obtaining it from different private nurseries, and majorly it is from uh, Bengali people. And the cluster and the water bodies area is around 30 to 40 kilometer away from the nursery or from the supplier. What are the precaution we can take during the arrival that we can reduce the stress and transportation uh, damages, and how can we check the mortality of the fish during the stocking?
uh, what size of fishes are you taking in there when you're buying from the private nurseries? What is the
It is
size of fishes you are taking?
it is mainly, sir, finger size, fingerlings.
Okay. So fingerlings, when you are taking from the nearby nurseries, they will all be coming into this makeshift water tank. When they put some polythene or some tirpal into the truck and they fill in water, and then somebody is there who's consistently just kind of shaking the water so that the BO level is maintained. That's the way you're getting it, or you're getting in small polythenes filled up with water and fishes and gas. What is the model in which you're getting the fishes?
Yes, sir. It is inside the plastic packet and along with water and oxygen also.
Okay. So the plastic packets which are coming in, you should be taking a precaution that you should not empty the packets immediately. So you should always put the packet first into the water body itself, so that the water in the water body and the water inside the polythene, they maintain an equilibrium of temperature, because half of the mortality happens because of the sudden temperature shock, because your water body is having a lower temperature compared to the water inside the polythene, right?
Yes, true,
So
true.
first you should leave the polythenes suspended into the water, and then slowly you should release the fishes. So this is one precaution that you can take. Secondly, when you get our medicine for your particular pond, whenever you're getting the fishes, let's say 12 o'clock you are getting the fishes. So in the morning at about 7 a.m. you should be doing one dosing treatment. Okay, so that the water is very well in good condition in all the parameters to receive the fresh stock of the fishes, right? And always remember, whenever you're releasing the fishes can have two behaviors. Either they will run towards the bank or they will run towards the center of the water body. If they are moving towards center of the water body after you release the fishes, that means they have adjusted well to the water body and they will survive. If they are running towards the bank of the water body, always be very skeptical for another 24 hours, because they have not liked the water and they are trying to run away from the water. Because when you are releasing the fish into the water body, they understand it clearly where is the bank and where is the deep. So this is one fish behavior which you should be observing while you are releasing the fishes.
Great, sir. Thank you.
मधुकर सर.
Yes, sir.
हाय सर, और एक छोटा सा सवाल है. Sir, here in Srikakulam, some tanks having very high canopy, sir, with different trees on bonds. So, what I am asking, falling of dry leaves into the pond, sometimes it gives bad smell, sir.
Yeah.
I think is it hampering the or disturbing the water quality?
See, natural leaves falling into the water body is actually adding phosphate to the water body.
Oh.
So the decomposition will happen naturally, but then it will lead to eutrophication eventually when the biomass is too high. Because whatever fishes are there, they're also excreting. Their excreta is ammonia, right? And this phosphate and ammonia both put together, when the biomass crosses a particular threshold, then it will lead to eutrophication. So the weeds will come, algal bloom will come. All that is a chain reaction. I mean, eventually it happens. But when you are doing the dosing treatment, all that will be neutralized.
Yeah.
Ideally, what you can do is you can, if it is possible, you can plant certain kinds of trees around the embankment area, so that when the natural leaves are falling in the leaves are also of these multiple kinds, which help the aqua ecology to neutralize them faster. So I'll send you the list and the directions where these plants should be planted, which plant should be planted in which direction of the water body, so that if you plant them, it will help maintaining the longevity of aqua ecology. And if any kind of trees are naturally there and leaf shedding is happening into the water body, that will be maintained. The equilibrium will be maintained by these kind of leaves. There are specific plants which will help you do that.
One more thing, sir, I want to know.
Yeah.
In integrated farming system, sir, we have taken 15 ponds as a model pond, and that have the potential of water spread area throughout the year. And we are also trying to do the fisheries and stockery in the same pond. There is a provision of a plantation of some fruit plant in the pond of that particular pond. And I think we are moving randomly with the banana and somehow drumstick kind of plants. Is there any standard for the plantation in the pond?
You're talking about the embankment area slope.
Yes, sir. In the slope area, right?
See, in the slope area, if you plant something like banana, that will, I mean, that can contribute towards economy, but it is not good for the pond. If you plant some of the creepers, like you have cucumber, you have gourds, the bitter gourd, or maybe the bottle gourd, or any of the gourd plant, करेला है, लौकी है, या आपका खीरा है, ककड़ी है, ये अगर आप स्लोप पे लगाएंगे तो this is going to help you in soil conservation also. This is also going to give strength to the embankment, and you will have your production as well. अगर आपको जो embankment का flat area है, let us suppose if your embankment is let's say 10 feet or 20 feet, तो आप उसके दूसरे एंड पे you can plant other fruit प्लांट्स लाइक पपाया, पपीता आप लगा सकते हैं, जो कि आपका स्ट्रेट होगा. अगर आसपास में जो भी एरिया आपका है, अगर इफ यू हैव दैट मंकी मिनस प्रॉब्लम देयर, बंदर वंदर बहुत आते हैं अगर, तो आप वहाँ पे गेंदे के फूल लगा सकते हैं, क्योंकि गेंदे का फूल अगर आपने एम्बैंकमेंट पे लगाया है तो द स्मेल ऑफ मैरीगोल्ड is something which the monkeys don't like. So lasan, which is your garlic, and आपका गेंदे का फूल which is your marigold, ये दो स्मेल जो monkeys हैं उनको पसंद नहीं है. तो अगर आप ये लगा देते हैं एम्बैंकमेंट पे और ये अच्छे से ग्रो कर जाते हैं एक बार, तो फिर आपको मंकी मीनेस से छुटकारा मिलेगा टू अ ग्रेट एक्सटेंट, बिकॉज दे डोंट लाइक द स्मेल. तो इस तरीके से
समस्या तो नहीं है सर यहाँ.
ओके. तो आप अगर आपको फलों वाले लगाने हैं तो आप पपीते का लगा सकते हैं दूसरे एंड पे, एम्बैंकमेंट के दूसरे एंड पे. जो स्लोप साइड है वहाँ पे क्रीपर्स लगाएं, जैसे आपका खीरा, ककड़ी और आपका तरबूजा, खरबूजा, इस टाइप के आप प्लांट्स लगा सकते हैं. और बाकी जो एक्वा इकोलॉजी को हेल्प करने वाले प्लांट्स हैं उनकी लिस्ट मैं आपसे शेयर करूंगा कि कौन से डायरेक्शन में कौन सा प्लांट लगाना चाहिए.
बिल्कुल सर, हम लोग वैसे ही पपीता और ड्रमस्टिक बनाना प्रीफर कर रहे थे. जो हम लोग का समझ है, बहुत आइडिया नहीं है उसमें कि कितना वो प्लांट से प्रोडक्शन और कितना बेनिफिट होगा वो तो पता है. अल्टीमेटली वो प्लांट को क्या करेगा, नेगेटिव पॉजिटिव, उसका क्या इम्पैक्ट है.
नहीं, मैं आपको एक चीज बता दूं कि अगर आपने एक्वा इकोलॉजी को बहुत अच्छे से मेंटेन किया हुआ है तो आपके आसपास में जो भी खेत है उसमें आप जैसे हमारा ट्रीटमेंट चालू होता है और एक्वा इकोलॉजी comes back in good shape, now you can use this water for irrigation of whatever kind of plantation you have around the pond. क्योंकि इनका ये जो वाटर है, इसका यदि आप फॉलियर स्प्रे करते हैं अपनी प्लांटेशन पे, किसी भी तरह की प्लांटेशन हो, अगर आप मॉर्निंग टाइम में अगर इस पानी का फॉलियर स्प्रे करेंगे तो यू विल सी दैट द ग्रोथ ऑफ द प्लांट इज मच बेटर देन योर नॉर्मल प्लांटेशन. और आपको कोई केमिकल्स का भी ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ेगा, इंसेक्टिसाइड, पेस्टिसाइड का भी ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ेगा. And even if you have any kind of diseases in the crop, तो वो diseases भी खत्म हो जाएंगे. मतलब I have gone to the extent of doing an experiment on the plants which had viral infection. और globally आज तक किसी के पास भी plant viral infection का कोई इलाज नहीं है. There is no insecticide, pesticide, fertilizer, anything that can help. अगर कोई भी प्लांट में वायरस है तो यू हैव टू क्वारंटाइन एंड यू हैव टू बरी इट इनटू द ग्राउंड ओनली. बट इन अ 5 acre क्रॉप वेयर इन आपका गोभी का प्लांटेशन था और दैट इंटायर प्लांटेशन वाज इन्फेक्टेड विथ वायरस, उसको भी मैंने नॉर्मल प्रोडक्शन लेते हुए देखा है यूजिंग दिस वाटर एज अ फॉलियर स्प्रे. तो योर इंटीग्रेटेड जो आपका कल्चर वाला जो प्रोजेक्ट है, उसके अंदर आप इस पानी को आफ्टर द ट्रीटमेंट इज डन एंड द aqua ecology is in good shape, you can use this rejuvenated water as a foliar spray on your entire plantation and you'll get excellent results. Anyone else? Any other questions? I think today's is more interactive session than yesterday.
Vidya should be
Everybody
here.
is a
I don't
fishery
know.
expert.
Yeah, we don't have another fishery expert today. Vidya, I don't know. Maybe his call dropped or whatever, but he has.
Yeah, Vidya was there. He
Oh,
logged
he is
out
here.
and then he again logged in and.
Yeah, he's here. He's
yeah,
here.
yeah, he's back.
Actually, current went down, so I was just
Okay.
disconnected for a moment. So I am back now. So I have just a little queries on just last time on the last session we have discussed, like we get to know that the water flow in a their in a own pathway, you know, they design their way. So they have some properties. So they can transfer from one place to, they can transfer easily from one place to another. So what I want to ask is that, for example, if you introduce something plant extract into the water bodies, and can same that diluted water can be taken into a sample and can be transferred to the other pond, will that be helpful to treat the other water bodies also or not?
I didn't get your question, sir. The treated water, you're wanting to use the treated water as the treatment water. Is that what you mean?
Yes, more or less. Means, for example, when I introduced some that treatment process into the one pond,
Yeah.
and after some days or weeks, can I take that sample and can be, since it may have that properties to treat the water, can same water can be taken and placed into the another water body? It will be helpful or not?
Helpful in what sense?
Means for the similar treatment, water treatment.
No, this is you're wanting to do a dialysis of the water body.
Means two ponds having the similar kinds of
No two ponds are similar, sir. As per the Vedic science, like every human body is having a different mix of Vata, Pitta and Kapha. Similarly, every water body is having a different mix. So every water body is to be studied. Just I gave an example of the Mansarovar and the Rakshastal and Gaurikund yesterday, right? Three water bodies just next to each other, and still they are entirely different from each other. One has got sweet water, one has got mixed water, one has got completely saline water, completely non-drinkable water. One is full of life, one is completely dead, and one is somewhere in between. Right, so no two water bodies are the same. Every water body is very different, and that is why we cannot make one standard medicine which is available off the shelf and you can start using the water body in any of the tanks. So any water body for which we need to build a medicine, we need to study the water body first, and then we make a tailor-made medicine for that particular water body. So that is how it happens. So as far as using this water for the agriculture purpose or shifting the water from one pond to another pond is concerned, yes, definitely you can do that. But once you shift the water from one pond to another pond, the properties of the water will change. It will not remain the same water because it will get weathered as per the condition of the pond number 2. So pond number 1, it was in one shape. Pond number 2, it will take another shape because soil, water and air, all the three conditions will readjust themselves for pond number 1 or pond number 2. That's how it happens.
Okay, Thank you.
Actually, I lost track of the time because the discussions like were so interesting. But I don't know. I still don't want to stop this. But I don't know. Like keeping in mind the precious time of Madhukarji, like it's already 12:33. I didn't even notice like that 1.5 hours have passed just like that. But I would request, like, if my colleagues have any other doubts, we can have like quickly in 1 or 2 minutes so that we can let go of Madhukarji.
मधुकर सर, और एक सवाल पूछ सकता हूँ? सर ये एक थोड़ा ब्रॉडली होगा शायद. सपोज देखिए सर, एक विलेज अपन एग्जांपल लेते हैं, इसे देखिएगा तो आप 1-2 ही आपको मिलेगा, छोटा या बड़ा हो, 1-2 ही पॉन्ड्स वाटर टैंक मिलेगा. तो प्रोबेबली से उन्होंने क्या करते हैं, साल में 1-2 बार या 3 बार मैक्सिमम हार्वेस्ट करते हैं, और ये भी आपका समर में ही करते हैं. तो हमको ये देखना पड़ता है कि सालों भर सिर्फ समर में ही 2-3 बार उनको मिलता है अपना बगल वाला आंगन वाला जो खेती का मछली ऑर्गन फिश मिलता है. अच्छा, बाकी होल द ईयर वो डिपेंड्स करते हैं कमर्शियल मार्केट में. वो भी आपको अभी जो बताया कि आंध्रा में ज़्यादा प्रोडक्शन, वो पूरा कमर्शियल है सर. तो ये लोग पूरा साल भर कमर्शियल में मार्केट डिपेंड करते हैं. तो हम ये मेरा यहाँ पर ये माय कंसर्न इज दैट हाउ टू फुलफिल दिस बिग गैप.
ओके, यस. अभी ये जो आपका क्वेश्चन है, दिस इज मोर फ्रॉम द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ जो हमारा जो मौसम का चक्र है ना, कि पहले सर्दी है, फिर गर्मी है, फिर बरसात है, फिर आपका सर्दी स्टार्ट होता है, फिर सीजन होता है. तो ये हर मौसम का इफेक्ट आपका वाटर बॉडी पे आता है. जैसे आप यूजुअली ऑब्जर्व करेंगे, इफ यू आर केयरफुली ऑब्जर्विंग द वाटर बॉडी, समवेयर अबाउट September, October, November, most of the water bodies are either they are dried, or they are not taking production, or they have purposefully dried them, and they are doing some sort of dredging or something like that sort. तो ये इसलिए होता है बिकॉज सर्दियों में जहाँ ज़्यादा सर्दी पड़ती है वहाँ तो लोग यही मान लेते हैं कि फिशेस की ग्रोथ ही नहीं होती है सर्दी में. Fish is also an organism which is not limited to certain cycles of the year. Fish will grow continuously throughout the year. तो ये सर्दियों में ऐसा होता क्या है, सर्दियों में आपको प्रोडक्शन मिलता क्यों नहीं? तो उसका कारण ये रहता है कि सर्दियों में बिकॉज जहाँ पे ज़्यादा सर्दी पड़ती है वहाँ पे यूजुअली आप पाएंगे कि फॉग भी बहुत होता है, कोहरा भी बहुत होता है. तो वो जहाँ पे भी होता है तो सनलाइट का एक्सेस टू द वाटर बॉडी रिस्ट्रिक्ट हो जाता है, और जब सनलाइट का एक्सेस रिस्ट्रिक्ट होता है तो जाहिर सी बात है जो प्रोसेस ऑफ फोटोसिंथेसिस होता है वो भी कॉम्प्रोमाइज होता है. तो जब फोटोसिंथेसिस हो ही नहीं रहा है तो फिश के लिए जो ऑक्सीजन प्रोडक्शन है वो नहीं हो रहा है. अब किसी आदमी को आप सफोकेट करके रख दीजिए तो वो क्या ग्रो करेगा? ऑब्वियसली नहीं करेगा. सो व्हेन द फिशेस आर सफोकेटेड, दे आर स्ट्रगलिंग फॉर लाइफ, obviously they are not growing, so that is why you're not getting a production there. So जहाँ पे जिस तरह का environment है, जैसे आप जो बड़े ponds हैं जो गवर्नमेंट के हैं, where they are not maintaining them well, आप देखेंगे कि mass kill of the fishes जो होता है that happens during October, November, December only, क्योंकि उस टाइम पे जो डीओ प्रोडक्शन है वो लीस्ट हो गया. लेकिन वो जो फिशेज है वो सांस लेना तो बंद नहीं करेंगे, सांस तो चाहिए उनको जिंदा रहने के लिए. तो जब सांस बिल्कुल ही आनी बंद हो जाती तो मास किल होता है. लाइक इफ यू ऑब्जर्व प्लेसेस लाइक रांची, या आपका यू वुड हैव सीन इट इन भुवनेश्वर ऑल्सो. वो सब जगह पे क्या है कि आप सरकारी तालाब है, ऑल वाटर बॉडीज आर गवर्नमेंट प्रॉपर्टी, एंड गवर्नमेंट इज नॉट मेंटेनिंग देम वेल. मतलब प्रॉपर्टी क्लेम करने के लिए तो आपने क्लेम कर लिया, बट व्हाट आर यू डूइंग फॉर मेंटेनिंग द एक्वाटिक लाइफ इन द वाटर बॉडी? तो उसके लिए आप कुछ करते नहीं है. मैक्सिमम आपको एक चीज पता है कि आप चूना डलवा देते हैं चारों तरफ, राइट। तो वो चूना डलवाने से आपका जो ऑक्सीजन प्रोडक्शन होता है, पहली चीज वो मोमेंटरली होता है, दूसरी चीज इट इज एडिंग अ लॉट ऑफ टेम्परेचर इनटू द वाटर बॉडी, राइट। तो जहाँ पे आपने चूना डाला है और जहाँ पे वो योर लाइम इज रिएक्टिंग विथ वाटर, वहाँ उस दायरे में अगर फिश आएगी तो बिकॉज ऑफ द एक्सट्रीम हीट जनरेटेड, फिशेस विल हैव द बर्न मार्क्स आल्सो ऑन द स्किन, राइट। तो वो सारी चीजें दे आर जुगाड़ एंड दे आर नॉट द राइट प्रैक्टिसेस। जो प्रॉपर मेंटेनेंस है, एक तो बड़ा सिंपल सा इलाज है, आपको फोटॉन्स ही तो नहीं मिल रहे हैं, जब सनलाइट नहीं मिल रही तो फोटॉन्स ही तो नहीं मिल रहे हैं आपको, आप आर्टिफिशियल लाइट्स लगा दीजिए ना। यू नो, इफ यू physically place artificial lights on the embankment area of the water body during this period, you will at least have a normal production of the dissolved oxygen. So light आपको लगाना है illumination के लिए कि लोग आएंगे बैठेंगे किनारे पे and they will enjoy the light. उस टाइम आपको लाइट लगाना चाहिए focusing on the water so that water gets photon and the DO production can go on. तो ये जो समर्स में प्रोडक्शन है और विंटर्स में प्रोडक्शन नहीं है, इसका कारण तो मेजरली यहाँ पर है। दूसरी चीज, एक वो हमारे यहाँ पे धारणा भी है कि भाई विंटर्स में मछली, आई मीन स्प्रिंग सीजन में मछली नहीं खाना चाहिए बिकॉज फिशेस ब्रीड इन दैट टाइम। एक ये बहुत बड़ा आई वुड से एक कम्युनिकेशन या थॉट प्रोसेस का गैप है, because fishes don't just breed in the rainy season. Fishes get the fresh water in the rainy season. और जब तक फ्रेश वाटर नहीं है, मछली या कोई भी जानवर और इंसान में फर्क यही है कि they will breed only when they have ample amount of resources available for the next generation. जब उसको खुद को सांस नहीं मिल रही है, खाना नहीं मिल रहा है, why will they breed? ये बेसिक इंटेलिजेंस फिशेस में या बर्ड्स में या एनिमल्स में सब में होता है। सो क्योंकि वो फ्रेश वाटर का सप्लाई ही रेनी सीजन में होता है, दैट इज व्हाई दे ब्रीड इन द रेनी सीजन। एक्चुअली दे कैन ब्रीड थ्रू आउट द ईयर, बट आपको वो फ्रेश वाटर, एम्पल अमाउंट ऑफ देयर फीड, वो सब तो मेंटेन करना पड़ेगा ना, देन ओनली इट विल हैपन। सो आपका ये जो समर में प्रोडक्शन का जो प्रॉब्लम है ना, व्हेन वी ट्रीट द वाटर बॉडी एंड द नेटिव इकोलॉजी इज रिस्टोर्ड, तो ये आपका सारा प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो जाएगा नेचुरली। It is only about making the resources available to the aquatic organisms, whether it is fishes or fin fishes or shellfishes, doesn't matter.
Right, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Madhurji. We almost like shot 20 minutes more. But Madhurji, we have our associate director here, Bhagyalakshmi ji. I'm glad like she has joined, but I've noticed this like right now. Yeah, Bhagya ji is the associate director of VASAN, and she had been founder member and one of the very old colleague like of ours, like who had been in this journey for a very long time, and she heads VASAN team, and she was the architect behind many innovative ideas and projects, which are large scale projects like which VASAN has taken up. She was also involved in livestock like for a very long time, and she is now handling this particular idea called Seeds Working Group. And the main focus of this seed working group is mapping, characterization and registration of indigenous seeds and land races across India. And she's working pretty elaborately on PPVFRA and also bringing land races into the formal seed supply chain. And when she learned about CFM and your work, she evinced a lot of interest like to be a part of and listen to you. And I'm glad like she is here, and I would request Bhagya ji if she has anything like to or talk to Madhukar ji before we wrap up today's session, as we already shot up at the time. I'll be very happy. Bhagya ji, are you there? Maybe like she is not around, but I think we definitely, yeah, she's here.
So Namaskar Madhukar ji. I worked on inland fisheries few years ago, but in Telangana we worked on a bit small and medium tanks, which comes under medium irrigation department. So in that part, largely the tanks are given to the rights are given to some community, that's Mudiraja Teluga community, where lot of Western interests are around that tax. So people are giving into lease and all that. So building ecosystem around fisheries. In this context, I'm much more interested to know more cases about where, I mean, your work where that has given a lot of results or good results in this situation where ponds are under Gram Panchayat or fisheries department, rights are given to some community or fisheries community, and fisheries community is not dealing with the fish production, but they are giving lease to other business persons. So many things are coming out of that when we start dialogue with them. So in that situation, I'm not in this session, but in further sessions, I just wanted to know how this kind of fisheries production, community forest community ecology building process can be carried out. That's my interest to participate in this session, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Bhagyaji, for asking a question. See, basically, the question that you have asked is more towards how to handle government processes rather than handling the ecology. So, government is it is a man-made structure, a man-made process. They never follow the laws of nature. So there are always workarounds. Like I'll tell you, there is a partner who was working in Maharashtra, and his interest was to restore the ecology of a particular lake, which had a lot of algal bloom and a lot of weeds coming up. But the government was not ready to support him. So I asked him about what are the kind of networks he has. So he said that he knows about one civil society organization, which is Maharashtra's Anglers Association. So I told him that okay, whether they have their control into the government processes or they have any access to the government department. So he was of the opinion that yes, the English Association has got a very good cloud of people and they can probably get a lot of permission from the government. So I said, okay, then in that case, because they are English Association, they are bothered about the fish's health. So you ask them to get a permission to support their fishes, and for supporting the fishes, they can do the treatment for the fishes. So that's how they got the permission. While they were not getting a permission for restoration and rejuvenation of the aqua ecology, they got a permission for doing a workaround for the fish's health. And that is how they started treating the water body, and the fishes were healthy, obviously. so,
Yeah.
so government always needs a lot of workaround. But then, as far as working for the fishery department is concerned, directly we don't work for any of the fishery department because fishery department is just an expense head. They are not interested in actual fish production. They are only interested in distributing freebies from the government that okay, this is going to build a vote bank for X Mantri and Y Mantri.
Yeah.
So they are their concern is not about how is the fish health getting affected for XYZ activity. They are only interested about how does the economy evolve. How do we benefit people so that they votes, or how do we build economy so that more revenue could be generated. So in both the cases, there is no question or no consideration for fish's health or aqua ecology or things like that. So their concern can only be addressed from the perspective of how do you get a better production, and then better production is going to benefit the communities which are involved in fisheries. Like I can give you one example. One of the water bodies that we were treating, the treatment of the water body work order was released by Nagar Nigam, but that water body had already been to one of the companies for doing fishery. So when we started treating this water body, their fish production increased. So usually what we used to tell the Nagar Nigam was that the physical cleaning of the floating waste or the plastic waste is something that is to be done by you, and the fresh water supply for us to dilute our concentrate and release into the water body is to be supplied by you. Now, obviously, government department has that tendency of lethargy, and things were not happening on a daily basis. So this company, because this was benefited out of our treatment, they said, you forget Nagar Nigam, I will do all these activities for you, so that my production is increasing and they get a clean pond. So that is how these models work out, and people get benefited.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I got your point. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. We already shot like 20 minutes more, and I really apologize for extending or taking much of your time, Madhukarji, and also apologize to colleagues for that
No,
glitch that
I'm
happened in the
absolutely fine, Kanna. If you want to have another session also, I have no problem. Because I
Yeah, we
like
would
the
love to.
people, because people are interacting with a very free mind. I mean, the kind of discussion we are having is a very healthy discussion, and it's going to benefit everybody. So
Yeah.
if you want to have
Thank you
another
so
session
much.
also, I have no problem.
Yeah, we would love to. We'll definitely plan, as we are trying to launch this program and project with you. I think we'll have more and more sessions coming up in the future. So I'm sure most of my colleagues would also love to be a part of it. So I guess that comes to the conclusion of this session, and I would like to thank Madhukarji for his valuable time, and also thank all my colleagues for their active participation and interest in this. I also would like to thank Prachi for coordinating all this. Thank you very much for all your participation, and thanks Madhukarji especially for joining us. And we look forward for more interactions like this in the future.
Yes.
And I wish you all a very good week ahead. Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Namaste.